Awesome show today. We're going to kick it off with our first guest, the host of our awesome barbecue party that we have at every one of these events. Is Dan Curtis over at TriumphPay. Come on, Danny. You got a ring at the end. Oh, you want a double ring? He just broke the prize. It's insured, don't worry. Hit this. He couldn't wait. He was chomping at the bit. Come on over here, Dan. A little tight, isn't it? You enjoying the show so far?
So far, just gong ringing.
Did you catch Brad Jacobs?
I did not.
You did not?
I was traveling.
You'll have to watch the replay. By the way, all of you who are unaware, if you missed any of these sessions here, they're all available on demand. You can catch them afterwards. Dan, your team can catch you. You can send this to TriumphPay.
Awesome.
They can check out the show.
Very good.
Yeah. What's on your mind today? What's a big issue for you guys right now?
Well, I think for everybody right now, fraud and double brokering are big issues. You know, TriumphPay was started to kind of make back office efficiencies available to brokers and shippers, as well as to have some fraud prevention capabilities and to make access to funds easier for carriers and factors. As we've kind of grown and put a network construct in to move data in a structured way between those parties, we've really focused on the verification of that data, knowing exactly who everybody is in the party, and trying to use tools to root out double brokering and fraud within the industry.
Dan, when is this worse? Because they say it's a climbing issue, and you would think that in a great market where there's tons of freight, this would be a major problem, would be harder to sort out. But it seems like in this down market where it's harder to make money, there's more fraud than ever.
Seems that way. I've been in the space for 21 years. Right now, there seem to be more intentional bad actors trying to get fraudulent credentials, trying to set up factoring companies that look like they're legit and they're not, and then using whatever methods they can to get payments directed to them versus the right party. And so it takes a ton of data to root that out of the system. You can't, they're so good, there's organized crime involved, there are people that have studied how we interact as an industry, and the less freight there is, the more time there is to do that.
I'm really curious about one point that you say organized crime. Is this U.S. organized crime, or is this a global problem where they're attacking U.S. freight as well?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, as we have partnered with Highway and done things to really look at who is moving, who could move this freight, who is the real party on the other end of that transaction, both from a financial and from an operational standpoint, we have found there are many avenues that people are taking to get into this industry to try and defraud us. And that, some of the estimates that we've done, $500 to $700 million of double brokering going on in the industry annually. And
700, you said 700 million?
And a lot of that freight does get moved appropriately. It's just not moved by who said it's being moved by. So if there are problems with it, if there are claims, if there's an accident, if there are payments that don't get made, you need to know the verified party on every side of the transaction in order to make sure that everyone is safe in that line.
What is the difference between what we're talking here? Because there's a lot of people, you bring this up and they go, there's co-brokering, and what's the big deal with double brokering? But there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, co-brokering, when I was in the brokerage space directly, we would do agreements with people that could move freight where we didn't have capacity for that certain kind of movement. So we would put in a structured contract that we knew who the parties were to the transaction. The shipper knew who the parties were to the transaction, and all of that worked well. If you represent that you're going to move freight and you send someone else that has no obligation to that freight or to the payment of that to the dock to pick it up, then you've broken all the chain of custody that's appropriate. You've broken the verified parties in the transaction. And so it is a problem in this industry that needs to be rooted out, and we all need to know in a 100% accurate way who's moving freight, who's tendering the freight, who's going to get paid for the freight, who's providing financing on the freight. We need it all, and that's what we're doing at TriumphPay, is putting a network of structured data in from shipper to broker to carrier to factor to carrier that allows all parties to be verified. We've done internally this TriumphNet, which takes 10 million discrete records and ties them to all of the parties that have bank account information tied to that, who have MC numbers, who have all of the verifying data so that we know exactly who someone is. And that's how we make payments so safe. That's how we prevent some of these fraudulent actors from gaining a foothold in the marketplace.
What happens when TriumphPay uncovers fraud?
So we notify the person that we're paying on behalf of, right? If you think about what we do, we're not deciding who gets paid. That's a shipper or a broker who has freight to move. We don't have any freight to move. We just have instructions to pay the parties in that. So we notify the people that we're paying on behalf of. It's a very important distinction of our services is that we don't decide those things. We're instructed. We are doing something on behalf of someone, and it involves payment. We don't make the decision, so we inform. Hey, we think because of the statistics of this carrier, it's impossible for them to move this many loads a week. And we think they would likely be double brokering. Would you like us to make the payment at your direction? And so that's how we kind of notify that there could be problems.
Why isn't this might be a stupid question, but why isn't this a law enforcement problem? Why is this a TriumphPay problem? Why is this a shipper problem? Why isn't law enforcement doing anything about this, or are they?
It's hard for me to say why they wouldn't. When we have engaged them, not TriumphPay, but in my past, when we have engaged them on fraudulent carriers or double brokered, it is impossible to get a resolution from them because they just stay out of that from a criminal perspective. And so if the loads are stolen, and if there's a criminal ring that is stealing nuts out of California because they can ship them overseas and make a bunch of money, then law enforcement has a much better play into the credential stealing or the fraudulent setup of a factor or a carrier that it's just a tougher path for them to go down.
Is this like a shock to shippers or inexperienced shippers? You see a lot of those who have not experienced double brokering or fraud, and they get into it and they realize that there is no Johnny Law that can help them?
I think it is. I mean, I think what covers a lot of sins is robust freight market. And it's outside of freight too, but I think what happens in those times is people just they're just not paying attention to what's really going on, and it gets worse when things are slower and when things are more difficult, which they 100% are right now. And so I think the awareness of those things and to have a solution that can help root them out, I think people are much more willing to listen at a time where they're not overrun with freight that they're making $300 a load on and just not focusing on some of the things that long term have systemic value loss in this industry.
So you mentioned structured data a few times. What is that? Why is that important to this component of stopping fraud?
So if you think of how paperwork moves within the industry, there are a lot of inefficient ways, bills of lading, proof of delivery. Everyone wants to know paper-wise that we've signed and we've all agreed that these are the things that are going on to move this freight. That can all be handled. That's all unstructured. It can be sent through emails, and that can all be from an OCR or from other formats put into a structured data where anyone integrated into that network, that data can move between them in fields that are all the same, so everyone knows who the payee is on this and that is verified information through that network. Who is really going to move this load? Am I, as a factor, buying a verified load from a broker? And all of that can be done without phone calls, without emails. All of that unstructured way that this industry has decided is the best way to prove that the load is being delivered appropriately or that we're financing the right party in this, that can all be moved through structured data in a network where it goes directly into their TMS or their FMS, and it verifies all of the fields that need to be verified to know that this person should be paid, this is the right load ID, this is the right delivery date, will pay date. Everything in that can be moved in a structured data manner. So you don't have calls, emails, faxes, if there are any of those anymore.
Do you see AI, like it's an arms race between the good actors and the bad actors? Do you see AI helping to stem fraud or helping to increase fraud? Because it does give bad actors those tools.
I haven't worked for a fraudster, so I don't know how much they're
like what they're thinking, how tech they are.
We are definitely using machine learning to get better at every piece of data and matching that data through our network.
Yeah.
And even in what I mentioned, TriumphNet earlier, those 10 million discrete records that are tied to verified payees with verified bank accounts where we've gone through today the veracity of that account, its ongoing operations, who is the owner, what is the right route, all of those things, those are things that we use machine learning to get better at doing that, and then it's all done in an automated fashion so that we have the most up-to-date, accurate information for everyone in that supply chain cycle of who is getting paid, who is getting financing in that arrangement, and what load is really being moved.
Wow. Well, Dan, who should talk to TriumphPay today? Now we got it live. We got a virtual version of this, and we got the live networking one. And Brad Jacobs said we may all have implants and have like Apple goggles on, and we won't even have to go to the event. But then my question is, like, if we all have Apple goggles on, how is it the same? Like, we're not. I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not fully there on that one.
Not yet.
But people here who are not virtual, they want to come to TriumphPay booth. Why should they? And what are you going to talk about?
Well, every broker, factor, shipper, if there are any carriers here, that is our goal, is to have that when a load is created in a shipper's ERP, for that load information and that remittance information to be moved through a network to every party within that load. If that carrier is factoring that load, if that broker is moving that load, if a carrier is moving it directly, that all of those parties be integrated into the network so that we can create those efficiencies for them. One, we provide a 100% verified move with verified remittance information, and we also eliminate the need for people to be doing that work within any of those constituents within that load movement. So anybody in the supply chain space, that's what we're trying to welcome. Warm welcome to TriumphPay. Come get on the network, and we can do it for you.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to your barbecue a little bit later, and thanks for stopping by the show.
You bet. Thank you.
Everyone check out TriumphPay. You kind of already hit the gong. Do you want it to, it should kind of be at the end. Do you want to take one more shot at it?
No, I think Eric Barr should come up.
Where is Eric Barr? Eric Barr, we need you up here to bang this gong. By the way, Dan, I have a hat for you before you walk off. Is that Eric Barr right here? He looks pretty strong. Come on, Eric. Yeah, well, all right. Well, Justin, do we have an extra hat? Justin says we have an extra hat. Then you're good.